Steaming Queens. I'm Bella.
I'm Shannon.
And I'm Ashley.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again today. We are going to be reviewing a fan favorite, The Ring. Before we go ahead and get into that, which we're all very excited for, we're going to do our segment, Spill the Tea. So, Bella, how's your week been, and what are you drinking right now?
I am drinking a tangerine LaCroix because I'm apparently into LaCroix now. My week has been a blur, so I really couldn't tell you, and I don't think I want to think about it. So that pretty much sums it up.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we just got to put some things behind us.
Yes.
I'm glad also that you like LaCroix. You've joined the dark side.
I know, the bubbly dark side.
So, Ashley, what are you drinking and how has your week been?
So, my week has been a twister of crap. I mean, it's been fine. My car got broken into, so it was a good week to watch my comfort movie a lot. I watched Practical Magic multiple times this week.
I love a good comfort movie.
And I'm drinking, so you guys may not know this, National Pickle Day was the other day. And on DoorDash, they had at the Dash Mart Pickle Rick Miracle Seltzers. So it's a pickled flavored seltzer. So what's funny is it's a pickled flavored seltzer. So like I tried it. I added more pickle juice because it wasn't pickly enough for me.
Bella's face for our listeners. Bella is not amused. She looks quite disgusted. I love pickles. I literally will drink pickle juice, like sometimes if needed, or use it as a mixer. I think it's so good. Anything pickle flavored, yeah, I'm weird.
I like the idea of like a sweet pickle type flavor, but like salty, I don't like salt. I just need to get this out here. I do not like salt. It makes me nauseous. It makes me queasy. But when you said pickly enough, all it made me think was, am I not turtle enough for the turtle club? Turtle.
This definitely wasn't pickly enough for the pickle club.
That's so funny. I prefer salty or like savory over like sweet things. So
same. But Bella, you also think that celery is too salty.
I just want to put a PSA out there for all you celery eaters, which I do not trust you. Celery contains about 80 to 120 milligrams of sodium, and I just really don't support that decision because it tastes gross.
I never knew that.
Bella's coming for you, celery fans. She's coming for you.
So gross. So gross.
That's so funny.
What about you, Shannon? Spill the tea.
All right, the tea. I'm trying to be interesting, but there's not too much interesting from my week. Other than just, I know I always bring up school. I'm like, oh, it's stressful. But my students went back online for a while. So that was sort of a bummer. But we're here. We're doing it. I've just been pretty busy, but all good things. I'm getting excited for Thanksgiving break, and what I'm drinking right now is very boring, I will say, because I'm actually recording from my classroom, so can't do anything fun like a hard cider or seltzer, but I have some vending machine Aquafina. Environmentalists, please don't come for me. I forgot my reusable bottle.
Sounds good, though. Nothing wrong with a good water.
Refreshing.
So, before we get started, we had a couple things that we wanted to discuss. Follow up on our last episode and a mini corrections corner. So, for our corrections corner, we had to let you know the internet lied to us. Bobby Rowe is not 6'4". He's 6'5". How do we know this? Because Bobby himself corrected us. I'm still fangirling a little bit because it turns out he must have listened to our episode where we said he was 6'4", and he commented on it saying that he was 6'5", not 6'4". So I'm still trying to play it cool, but hey, Bobby.
Hey, Bobby. That's from Shannon. Keep that in the back of your mind, dude.
Then, a fun little revisit from our last episode. Episode 7, The Houses October Built. My friend Matt is a scare actor, and reached out to us because the other day on our Instagram story, Shannon mentioned Haunters, The Art of the Scare. She mentioned that, and we also referenced it in our episode. And turns out that Matt was almost a documentary. He is a scare actor who has won awards for his work in haunts, and he's worked as a scare actor for 10 years. He says it's one of his favorite jobs he's ever had, so I figured I'd ask him a few questions about his experience as a scare actor, just so we could kind of let you guys hear from a true, authentic scare actor. This was super last minute, otherwise I would have just asked to do a quick Zoom call or interview with him, but this is all we could do on short notice. So one of the big questions I know we all had was, what was the interview process like? And Matt said that the interview process can vary from haunt to haunt. He says some haunts will have anyone sign a contract off the streets, while others can have a pretty wild audition process. The haunt that he spent the most time with had a pretty standard job interview portion and then 3 audition sections. So what they would do is they'd put you into a group, and then they'd take this group into 3 different zones, and they would have you act as characters in that zone. Usually they would have a different theme to each one, and sometimes they would even film the actors while they were doing this audition so that the haunts could go back and rewatch them to help decide who they wanted to pick. Matt does say that the background portion can be a little weird. Most haunts will ask you if you can pass a background check, but never actually run them. He also said that there can be people who get through the process who probably shouldn't. But I will say this, Matt is a great guy. He's the kind of guy that you would want if you're like drunk at a bar to like walk you home because you know you'd be safe and no one would mess with you. So I'm just gonna cross my fingers and hope that all of them are like Matt. Another thing that he said was we were unsure about the proper terminology of what people who work in this industry like to be called. If it was scare actor or scare worker. Matt said typically scare actor or haunt actor is the way to go. Some people travel from haunt to haunt, so these individuals prefer traveling actor or guest actor, but 9 times out of 10, no one's going to object to being called a scare actor. And I also asked him what was the craziest thing he's ever seen at a haunt. He said that there were so many crazy things. One haunt that he worked at had a scoreboard of all the things they could get people to do. Things like cry, pee themselves, poop themselves, faint, etc., etc. One time when he was working, he accidentally made a 40-year-old woman poop herself, and he said that was pretty wild. But yeah, there's a whole scare actor haunt industry out there that just absolutely blows my mind. I think that's fascinating. So if you guys are interested in hearing more from Matt is a part of the Debate This podcast. Go give them a follow and a listen. They just did an episode on Studio Ghibli, and I really enjoyed that. I learned how to pronounce it correctly, so props to you guys. You can find them on Instagram and Twitter as Debate This Cast, all one word, and their website is debatethiscast.com. They're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
So for everyone out there who's a listener, we've also added our podcast to YouTube and Google Podcasts, so definitely go check us out there as well.
And with that, I think it's time for us to get into The Ring. Woohoo! The Ring was released in 2002 and directed by Gore Verbinski. It won Best Villain at the 2003 MTV Movie Awards and Best Actress at the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. The Ring is based on a Japanese ghost story and is a remake of the 1998 film Ring. It is given a 7.1 out of 10 stars on IMDb. So a little synopsis for anyone who maybe it's been a little bit since you've seen the movie. Journalist Rachel Keller is investigating an urban legend of a cursed VHS tape that may have just killed her niece. As the legend goes, once you watch the tape, you only have 7 days left to live. For Rachel, the legend takes a darker turn when her son accidentally watches the tape. She must race against the clock to save him because some evils can't be contained behind a screen. Dun dun dun.
Dun.
So I have to ask, when was the first time that you guys watched The Ring? Because this came out in 2002. We were... Oh, how old were we? Math is hard.
I think we were in 6th or 7th grade because I remember having a crush on this boy, Jacob. I won't say his last name, but I remember where I was sitting in history class and we were talking about wanting to see The Ring. So this was 2002. I think we were like maybe 11 going on.
Okay,
11.
I could see that.
But didn't September 11th happen 2001?
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Okay, no, we were probably, I'm sorry, math is
4th
hard.
grade.
No, yeah, we were definitely probably 9 here. But
Yeah, we were in, like,
I think I'm thinking of The Ring too. Sorry.
Oh, that could be.
My brother wanted to take me to see The Ring too. He's 8.5 years older than me when I was in 6th grade. And I really wanted to go see it with him, and my mom wouldn't let me. So that was unfortunate. And I remember talking about it with this kid that I had a crush on, Jacob, trying to impress him that I was probably going to go see The Ring with my brother, but I was definitely lying.
Ooh, Shannon. Your 9-year-old Shannon's a little badass over there.
Woo!
What about you, Bella? When did you first see The Ring?
I can't remember did your parents own The Ring?
So, this is super embarrassing. Please, nobody come for me. The first time I watched it was to review it for this episode. I had never seen it because I know Bella's giving me a look right now. I had never seen it because one of our friends told me because I wasn't allowed to watch scary movies. Like, my first scary movie was when I was like 13. And it was, well, aside from like when I saw The Village with my aunt, it really made my mom mad. So I wasn't allowed to see anything until I was 13 or so. And I remember a friend telling me about it because I wasn't allowed to watch it. And she told me basically the whole plot. So by the time The Ring 2 came out, I figured, well, I can watch The Ring 2 because I've already know what happens in the first one.
Oh,
Wow.
That's funny. Okay, actually, I do recall the first time I actually saw The Ring, like really watched it, well, like kind of watched it, sorry, Mom and Dad, is when I was seeing for like 2 weeks between junior and senior year of high school.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
I'll say his name started with a J. I doubt he listens to this podcast, but I had the biggest crush on this kid. And we like watched the movie together and I just thought he was so cute. So I was like sort of watching the movie, sort of paying attention to him. Very innocent, I swear to God. But it was just so funny because that's what I think about when I think of that movie initially.
So Bella, when do you think you first saw it?
I know I saw it like when I was fairly young. I'm trying to think who I saw it with or when I saw it, but it was definitely like middle school.
So I think it was middle school because I have a funny story for all of our listeners out there. Bella and I have known each other since 5th grade, so we have a lot of funny childhood stories. So this is one of them. We were over at one of our friends' house. It was Bella, myself, and 2 of our other friends. And one of our friends, let's just say her name's Mallory. That's not really her name. Let's just say her name's Mallory. And Mallory decided that she wanted to play a prank on us and make us think that The Ring was going to happen. So she said she really watched that video and that she got a call that said 7 days, and it was literally a week to that day. I had never seen the movie, so I didn't really fully understand what was going on. I was just like, okay. So one of the pranks that she tried to do was we were at the sleepover and she kept saying that the TV was turning on out of nowhere. I said, oh, Mallory, your remote control is in your pocket. You probably just sat on it. Or, you know how there's a big puddle of water on the floor? She's like, oh my God, there's a puddle of water on the floor. She's here. And I walked up and I was like, oh, Mallory, there's just ice cubes. You probably just dropped some ice cubes and they've melted.
You were totally ruining, like you were foiling all her evil plans.
I was, and I felt bad because I didn't even know, because I had never seen the movie, so I didn't know to be scared of all of this.
Oh my God.
I remember, Bella, you were there, and our other friend was there, and you guys were both like, what? And I'm like, oh, wait, it's just this. And then you guys were both like, Mallory's just trying to prank us. And I'm like, I don't get it. Was this supposed to be scary? I don't understand.
You were
were
such
like
an innocent child.
I was.
you were like the OG Scooby-Doo crew, like how they uncover everything at the end.
I was Velma. I'm not gonna lie. I was obsessed with Velma as a kid, so I'm more than fine with that. So, a fun fact or fun thing about this movie is that The Ring is based off of a Japanese movie called Ring, and that movie is based off a book called Ring, and that book is based off of a Japanese ghost story. So before I get into this, I'm going to apologize for any mispronunciations. I do not speak Japanese. I do not claim to speak Japanese. I'm probably going to butcher it all. Please don't come for me. So The Ring is based off a Japanese movie that was released in 1998. And then that movie was based on the novel Ring, written by Koji Suzuki. I think in Japanese you would say it Suzuki Koji. Just putting that out there. But his novel Ring is based on a Japanese ghost story. From my understanding, the ghost story originates from the Himeji Castle, and this castle was built somewhere between 1333 and 1346. It was a home for the Lord of Himeji. It's a really popular tourist destination in Japan, and it's known for being lucky, but it also has a really spooky side story attached to it. It's the story of a girl named Okiku, and Okiku died in a well just outside of the castle. Long story very short, Okiku worked as a servant for a samurai who fell madly in love with her, but Okiku was not on board with that. It's said that one of Okiku's daily tasks was to tend to these golden plates that were in the castle. The story has many versions, but in one version, the samurai hid one of the plates, and if she didn't agree to be with him, he would blame the disappearance of the plate on her, and as punishment would throw her down this well. Typical guy stuff, I know. Another version says she threw herself.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just have to say that is like the worst case of being friend zoned I have ever heard.
Right? Come on, people. Another version says that she threw herself down the well because she was full of despair about the situation. Either way, poor Okiku died in the well. But in the aftermath of Okiku's death, it is said that she would crawl out of the well every night and torment the samurai until he went insane. It is said that she could be heard in the dungeons, counting the plates every single night and going into a violent fit of rage when she would discover the 10th plate was still missing. Okiku's well is still outside of the Himeji Castle, but it now has iron bars over the top. Super spooky.
We stand a strong, independent woman here. Good job, Ukiku's ghost.
You haunt him. You tell him no.
You haunt him hard, girl.
So the book Ring was published in 1991, and it's the first book in a trilogy. There's the second book, which is called Spiral, and the third book, which is called Loop. The novel and the book both have some significant differences. There's a male reporter in the book and a female reporter in the novel. The main villain is a male instead of a female child. And then in Japan, they have a little bit more of a paranormal input on it than they do in the American version. But otherwise, they have a very similar plot. Especially for the films, they both revolve around a female reporter who has a family member who dies from a tape, and they go to investigate. Both of their sons watch the tape. Anyone who watches the tape dies in 7 days. So those are all the same. One of the other main differences is in the Japanese film, the little girl is named Sadeko, whereas in the US version, the girl's name is Samara.
And from what I saw, in addition to the US version and the Japanese version, there's also a Korean version called Ring Virus that came out in 1999, which is pretty much right in between when those two came out, so I thought that was interesting.
I'll have to watch that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
I like it. For more information on Ukiku or The Curse, check out bloodydisgusting.com. They have a great little story on it, and that's where I got a lot of my information.
That's a name.
I love the name of some of these sites. Actually, some of our followers have really interesting names too.
They really do. I dig it. But I think talking about Okiku and Sadeko and Samara leads me into this whole concept that the ring follows and is a really common theme in a lot of early 2000s horror movies. And it's this dark-haired demon child as the villain. We see that in Silent Hill with Alessa. Side note, Silent Hill was based on a Japanese video game, so there's a lot of Japanese influence as well. But we also see it in movies like Orphan, The Omen, and so many other films in that early 2000s period. I just think that's such an interesting concept that we see repeat itself over and over again.
I find that fascinating as well. I do believe that The Ring sparked a lot of these films in the early 2000s. I think it set a trend for films in America based off of these Japanese stories and these Japanese myths. Something I find interesting and also a little bit, I guess, unfair is symbolically, and we study this in a lot of literature that I teach with my students, darkness or darker colors is seen as being evil or being unwanted or something of that nature. And that mindset in history has obviously led to a lot of really problematic viewpoints, such as obviously, I don't know how far into this we want to get, but people owning slaves and justifying things because of skin color. And I mean, we can argue, well, the dark-haired child, I mean, they had very light skin that contrasted very much with that dark hair, but I just thought it was really, I mean, and also if they're based off of a Japanese tale, if you have darker hair, that makes sense. But I do find it interesting. You're not going to see the little blonde Angelica girl with the blonde hair being the one who's haunting. And I'm like, why not? There's a drink at one of my favorite bars called the Toxic Blonde. So why not say that blondes can't be toxic too? It's coming from a blonde. It's just what my point is it's interesting that that trend took place, only because I feel like it is, I wish that people would break that barrier. I would love to see a little blonde girl being the haunter. Although I guess there probably are examples of that. But usually they're the ones being haunted, like in Poltergeist, Carol Ann.
So, going a little bit off of that, Shannon, cool fun fact that about Samara, Sadeko, about their type of ghost, is that it's based on a mythological creature or Japanese ghost that manifests after dying in the grip of powerful rage, and they return as a really pale, dark-haired ghost that seeks its vengeance on everyone. So I wonder if that has some unforeseen influence on other movies. For example, the success of The Ring at in the box office ended up inspiring and paving the way for more American remakes of Japanese films, such as The Grudge, Dark Water, Pulse, One Missed Call. And so I'm wondering if different parts of this movie have influenced other non-Japanese movies as well.
Yeah, I would think that would also be a big factor to it, as well as, and I hate bringing this up, and we can cut this out if this sounds really bad, but the contrast of extremely pale skin on extremely dark hair is so common within a lot of horror and spooky, and I think the concept of just pale skin relating to malnourishment or kind of all these strains on the body presents that concept visually, in addition to how else the film or whatever it plays out.
Yeah, going off that, Bella, that is a good point, especially because the pale skin does suggest corpse-like qualities. I mean, that pale of skin and all of that. So, I mean, I do see that. I'm just saying it's just interesting to me. In any myth or legend, it's a lot of darkness that you see that overtakes light. And I see that with that dark veil of hair hanging down. That's just how I perceived it. Also, I'm an English teacher and I go really far into these analyses. So, my mind just, I am that person that's like, the kids are probably just like, the sky's blue, Ms. Kernan. We don't need to analyze it.
But sometimes there's a deeper meaning behind it, whether it's intentional or not. I always found it really interesting because you both make really good points. And Bella, sort of going off of your point, it's so common with these characters, especially, Samara does some horrible things, but at the same time, she is a pariah on that island and in that town, and she is abused severely by her family. It's the same thing in Silent Hill with Alessa. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Silent Hill, fast forward a little bit. Alessa turns into a villain because of everything the town has done to her. And it's this common theme in these movies of these devil-haired children who really aren't bad to begin with, but turn bad because of what environment they have been put into.
Yeah, and to kind of like, I guess, combine Shannon's like idea of darkness and mine about the pale skin, it's almost like it's half and half. You see the pale purity of the child, which I think is very controversial, like Shannon said, because pale or white does not equal pure. And then the darkness of the hair and how maybe that's its way of representing evil, because you do have this child who I believe was innocent to begin with and then became over time this dark figure.
Bella, if you were in my class, you would totally get an A for that analysis. Like, these are the kinds of conversations I like to have. But that is such an interesting point. I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It was interesting what you were saying, Ashley, with how this child was put in this environment. And that's, I mean, it brings you back to nature versus nurture. And what was interesting, I was watching this movie with my roommate who had never seen it, and she doesn't like scary movies, but she wanted to try one out. And she was like, I just feel so bad for her. Are we supposed to feel bad for her when they do these flashbacks? And I'm like, yes, we are. And that's what makes this movie so cool to me, is that it's an emotional movie as well. It's really intelligent, really well done. And you do get that, that sympathy for or empathy for that character, the evil character.
One of the film's biggest criticisms is that, during the film, there's not a lot of, you have like a big jump scare, but then you have almost 45 minutes of no actual scares. And I think that while there aren't a lot of scares in the midst of it, there's a lot of story building, character building, and I think that one doesn't only make Samara more sympathetic, but it also makes the whole situation itself that much more scary, sad, and I think it's hard for people to sympathize with a villain. We talked about in our first episode about sympathizing with Dr. Lecter and then feeling bad about it, but in this situation, you don't feel bad about offering her sympathy because she has been through so much, and that makes for such a more unique villain.
I think something interesting to kind of play off that is that the actress who played Samara was scared of herself in the film. And the fact that she was scared of her own self is like, it's sad, but also it's like clearly she was doing the part justice to the point where, she was being seen in this scary way.
Another thing, too, that I found interesting, since we're talking about the actress that plays Samara, I think that's really cool. Or not cool, but that's a really interesting fact, is that she is such a good actor. That walk, in many other horror films, we have the iconic, quote unquote, iconic walk. So we get Michael Myers moving like he's through jello, but it's still this, it's something that has set a precedent for other movies. But then you have this, and I think this is very different. That walk that she does, I think it's iconic. I remember in high school, one of our theater friends would do the crawl or the walk, and like with the hair over the face, people know that walk, and they know. I mean, that figure, the Samara figure, is so. Again, I know I keep saying the word iconic. I'm trying to think of a different word. So that figure is very
Memorable.
Iconic fits though.
yeah. I mean, it's just so fascinating to me how that figure has set the precedent for other creepy children figures.
All right, and so before we start talking about the film style, I just wanted to point out that the girl who plays Samara, Davi Chase, I think I'm pronouncing that.
I thought it was pronounced okay. Everywhere I looked online, it was a different pronunciation. Some places said Davi, other places said Davy. Some random place was like Davi. Like
That girl. She actually voiced Lilo from Lilo and Stitch, and she also played Samantha Darko, which Donnie Darko is like one of my all-time favorites. Like my friend Katie and I used to watch it a million times when we were in middle school, but she played Samantha Darko. So I thought that was really cool, especially the Lilo and Stitch, because who doesn't know that? Shout out to Amanda's dog Lilo.
yeah, hi Lilo. So Shannon, you had talked about how Samara has become this iconic character, especially because of her walk and things like that. But I think a lot of this film style itself is sort of iconic as well. The entire movie has this green shading to it. And fun fact for all of you, for the choice of the film's color, it was decided that everything was to be tinged with the color green to give the film a sickly, unnatural feeling. Sets were also lit in a way so that none of the characters have a shadow, so it creates this almost subconscious sense of creepiness, which I thought was incredibly spot on and incredible.
I think I might be colorblind after you just said that. When I was watching it, it looked like it was blue tinged to me. I saw blue the whole time. Oh no.
I was looking at this article. It's called The Aesthetic of Fear Using or Use of Color and Shot Design in Horror Film by Denise Gonzalez. And they mentioned that it's primarily grays, blues, and greens. So like a blue green. And one of the things that they do is they add a pop of color of red. And you see that in the tree when she's at the cabin. She looks out, there's the red tree. And I appreciate that because of color theory. And green and red are opposites. So that's why they work so well together.
Ooh, that's really cool. I think it kind of goes back to the whole conversation we had about green in our Hereditary episode about how I was losing my freaking mind over the color green. Color scheme and patterns like that have so much more of a subconscious influence than we give it credit for.
I think it made the movie, just as when we talked about in Halloween how the music, the score of the movie Halloween made the movie creepier. I absolutely think that that's the case with the filming color for The Ring. I don't think it would have been, if it was a warmer colored, I don't think it would have been half as scary. I loved it.
Yeah, I think that the color palette essentially introduces the concept of, like you said, sickly, like it's going to be bad, or something's going to go very wrong. And that's basically the color palette helping the storyline, work.
I read somewhere, I should have copied it down. I didn't think we'd have time to mention it, but I'm going to mention it now. I read somewhere that this green tinge was not very common in horror films at the time, but it's been seen in a couple other movies beforehand. But since this reemergence of this green tint, that you see it a lot more often in horror movies, and that The Ring really helped initiate and
Have an influence on?
like put a oh, there we go. The Ring really made the green tint a staple in horror movies, especially that we see today.
Okay, I think that is really interesting, and I think that those kinds of details with the filming or that filming style goes into just how much detail and depth go into the entire movie in general. What do you guys think?
I would agree completely. There is, from the director's standpoint, a fun fact I found on IMDb. There are subtle images of circles in various forms scattered throughout the film. Circles such as the designs on the doctor's sweater, even just like the shower drain, the way that it's set up, Rachel's apartment number, all these different circles continuously appear throughout the entire film, kind of highlighting the circular ring.
Okay, so this is obviously a very much a side note, but in Scary Movie, when they're like referencing the ring, you see like the guy go to sit down on the toilet and it has a ring from where the light is and like where his behind blocks out the light. And so, you know what? There really is rings everywhere.
That's funny, and honestly, it's like I can't believe that Scary Movie took the time to get that in depth about it either.
Oh, yeah.
We don't give Scary Movie enough credit. They go really in depth with some of the things that they mock and tease.
I saw Scary Movie before I actually saw The Ring. So when I watch The Ring, I think of Scary Movie every time. Every time.
Same. Another kind of interesting thing I think the film does a great job at is foreshadowing. For example, when the boyfriend, or I guess he's not really the boyfriend, but when Noah buys the cigarettes from the gas station attendant looks him in the face and says, "You're gonna die." And it takes you back. You're like, "What?" And obviously she's like, "Oh, cigarettes are bad for you." But in a way, that is foreshadowing. Noah is going to, spoilers, Noah is going to die. Sorry. Hard truths right there. Same thing with same thing with some of the things that happen though. Like the bloody nose that Rachel gets, Noah ends up getting that, and then Aiden ends up getting that as well. It's little things that at first when you see Rachel's bloody nose, you don't really quite understand. But then you see it happen to Noah and you see it happen to Aiden. You're like, oh my god, this is foreshadowing that she is coming for them and it will happen.
Something that I found interesting in the same article, The Aesthetic of Fear, was a part that says shot design in The Ring leans towards classic Hollywood horror conventions, using long shots that allow the audience to look for the source of the fear in the background, a strong focus on detail, by way of extreme close-ups as to obscure the horror and further build the suspense, and high and low angle shots meant to bring significance to certain things over others and create links between them. So there was a lot of like intent into how this was filmed, which I think is really interesting. And I'm sure, Ashley, I'm sure that's like something that's really interesting to you as well and you could appreciate.
Pardon my language, but like that's my shit right there. Like I remember watching the part where Rachel is at the Morgan house and she's sitting in front of the TV watching the tapes, and you see the lighthouse light kind of fading in and out in the background, and you have like it's sort of a long shot, but it's like a medium close up of Rachel sitting in front of the TV, but in the background you see Richard Morgan standing there, and that's what you're supposed to focus on in fear. It's those types of shots that normally you wouldn't necessarily, if you think of you looking at someone in that way, you wouldn't necessarily think of it as scary, but because of the camera angles that they put on it, it adds such a scare factor to it. Or when Rachel's pulling the monitor slash thread out of her mouth, when you flip it and it's kind of going from like a point of view way that directly puts you into her shoes and makes you feel her fright that much more.
I also think, like, to play off of the feeling, what they're feeling is when they show the video, it's like you're watching it. they put it in a position where you're essentially watching the video whether you want to or not, and how they kind of do they've like clipped together random scenes and it's very sporadic and there's no real tempo of it. It's just chaos, but it's so well done that it works.
Can I tell you something kind of funny?
Oh God.
So when I finally watched, so I've never really seen The Ring until recently.
Yeah.
And I had never seen the video that takes place in The Ring until recently. So I couldn't help but chuckling a little bit because the entire time I'm watching this, I can't help but think of Gabe's scary movie that he puts together in The Office, where he has Oscar's grandma like biting into an apple.
That's
and
what
a
it's
bunch of
played
vis-
off of. That's
I
exactly what
know!
it's played off of.
It was,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, this is so perfect! They did such a good job. I didn't even realize it."
Yeah.
That is
it's
so funny.
it's pure chaos. There's no real rhyme or reason. Like how a ladder would correlate to anything, I guess, unless it's like, oh, the ladder inside of the well to climb out, but like realistically, it's just chaos, but it's done in a way that you think it makes sense. And maybe it does, but you know what I mean? Like it's all over the place.
I definitely think it makes sense at the end, a lot more of it. And then when we realize that Samara can make these images in her mind kind of come to life or bring them out of her mind and into this like the digital world, I find that fascinating. So I do think it makes sense at the end once we can put the whole mystery together. And I love that mystery aspect of this movie. But another thing that I find interesting is that, and this also goes into the depth of, I think, what they're trying to say in the movie, is partly about the evils of technology. And again, I know I keep talking about what I teach in my classroom, but I do teach about technology and how we often read at least Ray Bradbury's short stories. And this year I'm actually going to teach Fahrenheit 451. But a lot of authors in the past have very much warned us as a society against the evils of technology. And I think that's so interesting how that is used here. Obviously, technology can be used for good things, for scientific reasons. We have a lot of technological advances that have made our lives easier and better and wonderful. We can communicate more. It's wonderful. However, there are a lot of ways that technology can really mess us up, and it can make our communication more frequent, but it can also make it less in depth. There are two sides to every story. So I do think it's interesting that the video and the TV are used as a weapon here. We also see when Richard, her adopted father, kills himself, we see that he uses a toaster in water, which is symbolic because, the well. But also, the toaster is used, and that electricity and the technology from that is used. So I just thought that was really fascinating. And I think it does sort of give us maybe something to think about there with, how often are we using technology? Probably a lot more since we're quarantined or we're not seeing as many people. So I thought that was cool.
No, I definitely agree. I think technology, although during this time, like during the pandemic, we're all very dependent on it. Like for instance, we're not able to record this together, so we're dependent on technology. But I think there is an over dependency, and it stems a lot from people who are younger, but people of all ages. And I almost chuckle at that when you say that, because we look back and like this movie was made in 2002, which really wasn't all that long ago, 20 years almost. But they use a VHS player, and you think about all the kids, like even probably your student Shannon, they're probably like, what, a VHS player? Like, why, what is that? Like, how does that exist? How does that work? And I think it's hilarious.
Can I just say the ultimate finale of 2020 is the Ring video going viral, and you can't really copy it anymore because it's already all over the place. So Samara just takes us all down. I think that's how 2020 is going to end.
Plot twist, I'm Samara.
At least it would be epic.
Can I also just say, I don't know if you guys found yourselves thinking this, but when Richard Morgan bashes Rachel over the head with a power surge, whatever, like a surge protector, whatever it was that he hit her with. And then he goes upstairs, and then she follows him. I'm like, girl, go. What are you doing? Like, don't sit there and follow him. He just smacked you upside the head. Get out of there.
There were a lot of moments in this movie that I was like, why is she, and I'm sorry, we can edit this out. I was like, why was she drinking the dumb bitch juice the whole movie? She really has dumb bitchitis. Like, she was really going into a lot of situations that were unsafe, and you're like, why? You were warned. You were warned by these kids who are being picked off one by one. Why are you watching this video? Why? Like, and I understand, yes, it's part of the story, but it really ticked me off. She was just acting very irrationally.
I always chuckle because it's like white people in horror movies are like, yeah, let's keep going. And then anybody else who's not white is like, no, I'm good. Actually, we see that this is not a good idea, so we're not.
Exactly. There was that on our Instagram page. You should follow us, everybody. We share funny things on our story. But on our Instagram page, what was it that we shared about the realtor being like, this house has been haunted and 50 people have died here over the course of, 100 years. And then it shows white people like running into it, like all happy with their like golden haired children, just like ready to unpack the boxes.
That's so accurate, though. And I feel like you see that through so many horror movies of white people doing really stupid stuff. Like, for example, Rachel trying to pet that stupid horse in the trailer. First of all, that was the most traumatic and scary scene of the entire movie. Fight me, I will fight you on this. That was traumatic.
It was because the horse didn't freaking do anything, and she irritated it, and of course, because of the curse, the poor thing went bye-bye.
That literally, when it fell off the boat, like, that was upsetting. Because I thought, oh, just fall over and you won't really... No, like, you hear it bang on the side of the boat.
And then you saw it in the water, and the little girl whose horse it was watching her horse. I would have been so sad. I was so sad. I'm sorry. We all look horrified. Our listeners are probably like, "Oh Lord, bring on the tissues."
Right? Well, I'm not a strong swimmer at all, so I can only imagine how I would feel if I like fell over the side of the boat in the middle of a lake, ocean, wherever it is they are. So this poor horse who's not designed to swim, I can only imagine how scared it must have been.
And on that note, let's talk about some mothers.
Yes. So I think it's interesting how Rachel as a mother figure in itself and Anna Morgan as a mother figure in herself, they have a lot of similarities, but yet also huge differences. For example, it's very heavily hinted at that Aiden was an unplanned pregnancy, but even though he was unplanned, Rachel still kept him, wants him, cares for him, loves him. Whereas on the other hand, Anna, who is not able to get pregnant, ends up adopting a child, and Samara ends up going unloved, uncared for, and abused. So I think that's interesting as a kind of an opposite. And the way that they're treated as motherly figures within the film. I heard a couple other podcasts ripping on Rachel for being a single mother who is career driven and passionate about her job and basically calling her a bad mother. And I was really kind of offended by that. I don't know how do you guys feel?
I find that wildly offensive, and I think that it sets women back tenfold, personally, that viewpoint. I personally know that if I do ever decide to have children, I will be working. And I think that it's sexist to shit on a mother for taking care of her child. We don't know if Noah pays child support. And in her own way, she is taking care of him. And also, I don't understand why women can't be working mothers and be good mothers, because my mom worked like my whole entire life, and so did my dad, and I had great parents. I had a great childhood growing up. We always made it work. I made friends through either like a daycare or a day camp, or, you know, I would go to my friend's house after school. I'd get off the bus with her every day because her mom did work from home. So I just thought that seems a little bit close-minded to me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think that the fact that this woman had the child and wants to continue taking care of it, and wants to do everything possible, and if that means having to work day in and day out, you know, why would you shame someone? You know, everybody has to work in different ways to take care of their child. As long as their child is well and getting love and is cared for, it's nobody else's business.
I would agree with that. And I think a lot of what one of the podcasts that I heard that was kind of ripping her a new one is they kept saying that Aiden was so mature and had to mature because of her lack of parenting. First of all, to comment on that, yes, Aiden is mature. To be super honest, Aiden's more mature than half the men I've dated in my life. I'm just going to put that out there. But at the same time, one, couldn't that be a sign of Rachel's skills or mothering techniques and abilities? Or two, some kids are just naturally born that way. For example, think about the kids who are extra, extra shy, or the kids like me who are over the top outgoing, who won't shut up. Some kids are just born certain ways, and that's how they are as a person. That doesn't mean that she was a bad mother.
Yeah, I think one thing that we don't see in this is Aiden growing up. So we don't know what events took place in his life. Some kids have things happen in their life that require them to grow up a bit faster. We don't know what their home life was like. You know, there's a lot of different factors that I think can shape or that do shape a child. But one thing that I thought was so interesting, and it took me forever, and it took me watching this movie so many times to finally accept or realize that Rachel is Aiden's mother, and that Aiden does just call her Rachel. And it weirds me out because if I were to ever no. Let me give you an example. If Ashley was to ever refer to her mother as Mary, she would be whomped into next year.
I kind of would have loved to see that.
No, it was
No.
very scary.
Rest her soul, she was a scary woman. As we got older, like this year, when she would do things that would frustrate me, I'd refer to her as Meredith, but I'd never say that to her face because I would have received the wrath of God.
I think the reason why we were so in line was thanks to your mom. Like there was no way we were doing anything. But like, let's be honest, we turned out great. So
Absolutely. Except for the one time that Ashley brought vanilla vodka into school as the TI leader.
That was a total accident.
It was.
Oh, it was literally. My mom had gone to a concert or something before, and we don't recommend doing this. Don't do this.
Do not do this, kiddos.
Sometimes to sneak alcohol into concerts or places she was going, she would pour them into water bottles. So one thing that she had done was poured vanilla vodka into a water bottle. Why she did that, I don't freaking know. But I was running late for school one day because I had a meeting to run in the morning. And I didn't want to bring a regular water bottle because I had a reusable one. I wanted to pretend like I was doing good work for the environment. So I took a plastic water bottle and poured it into a reusable water bottle because why? I don't know.
I didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah. So I get to school, I go through the whole meeting, and then I go into my first period class and I go to take a big swig of water because I was busy leading this meeting. And I literally thought I was poisoned because I didn't drink. I had never had, I had a sip of beer with my dad when I was like 10, but I'd never had anything really to drink. So I didn't know what vanilla vodka tasted like. And I thought someone had poisoned me.
And then you asked Ty, you were like, does this water taste weird to you? He's like, actually, this is vodka.
I was like, no, it's not.
It was probably the good stuff, though, so that's good.
Did you take like a shot worth of like consume
I was
it?
like, imagine you were really thirsty and you took a big gulp of water. Like you were going to take multiple gulps of water. That's what I started to do.
Did you feel the feels?
No, I didn't feel like tipsy or anything. Maybe because the panic was overriding any of that, because I was seriously afraid that I was poisoned. Straight up.
I mean, you kind of were.
It kind of was.
Technically, it is a poison, but
True. Okay, considering we're already on a side note, I want to bring up another side note about this movie. So you know the scene where Rachel is talking to Noah on the phone and she says, he saw the videotape, he saw it. And Noah's like, who? And she goes, our son. So the entire time I couldn't take that scene seriously because I was watching Rachel and I was like, I want to know where she got her lipstick from. That's a really nice shade of lipstick.
her makeup was always on point.
And I know that's like a scary movie thing, but her lipstick shade, I was like, I want that shade in my life. Yeah.
Apparently your perfect lip color shade is the color of your nipple.
I've heard that. I have absolutely heard that.
I have too.
Like, have you seen the TikTok where the girl's like, okay, and just like pretends to like whip out her boob to like color match? I'm like,
Oh, yeah. I need a lipstick shade. It's this color.
this color? Oh god.
So the last thing and question I want to ask you both is, what does the name The Ring mean to you? Like when you think of this movie and you think of the meaning behind the name The Ring, what do you think of? Like for me, when I think The Ring, I think it's called The Ring because when Samara is down at the bottom of the well, she sees that ring.
Yeah, I thought that's what they were referring to.
I thought so too. Turns out a lot of people think the ring refers to the phone ringing. No
I
offense.
literally never would have thought of that because the symbol that goes with the movie is that like ring that they show at the end when they show her being closed into the well.
So I told Paul that he should watch this movie, and I told him that it was about it was like a Hallmark movie that was like really romantic. It's about this girl who she just like is trying to find her lover, and she wants to propose to her with a ring. And he was like, I'm not buying that.
No, Paul hates scary movies.
But I just wanted to watch it. So I gave him a better version of it.
So, fun fact about the whole meaning of the name The Ring. Although the title itself is supposed to be a little ambiguous, Koji Suzuki, the author of the original novel Ring, always intended it to mean the cyclical nature of the plot rather than the phone actually ringing or the ring that she sees at the bottom of the well.
Or do you mean like the circle of life?
Yes, that's exactly.
Do you
what
like
I
that?
mean.
That was good.
I did. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
And with that, I think that's our review of The Ring. We should probably go into our ratings now. So, Bella, what do you give The Ring?
9.9 crowns out of 10. I love
Wow!
this movie. I love this movie so much because, well, one, it was one of the first ones that I ever watched. The first one was Signs, but who cares about that? But this one, it's so well done. And I think any movies that are based off of like Japanese or Korean or really anything that's not American do so much better concept-wise. And this one just, it will forever creep me out, and I'm okay with that. So 9.9 out of 10 crowns.
Awesome. What about you, Shannon? What do you rate it?
I think I will give it a 9 out of 10 crowns. I do give it a very high rating because it's just so well done, in my opinion. I find it, I mean, we've gone into all these different concepts with it. We could have so much to talk about. I think that It has a really good backstory, like we've talked about. I love that it's PG-13. There's really not much CGI, but it will forever be so scary to me. And I know we've said that about The Conjuring, but this one I forgot because it's been a while since I've seen it. I forgot how great it is and how scary it is without needing any of that. So 9 out of 10 crowns for me.
That's a good point. So I think I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 crowns. I was going to give it 7.5. I'm going to bump it up to 8. Only because I feel like the movie's technology dates it a little bit, and that can make it harder for younger audiences to connect. And some of the ways that they copy the tapes and do some of that kind of stuff isn't necessarily realistic. But otherwise, I love the whole plot. I love the strong female lead. I love the dark, twisted backstory. I think it's all pretty great. So with that, I think it's time to get into some fun facts.
Ashley's fun facts. Woo woo.
Woo! So, fun fact number 1. The tree with the fiery red leaves that we see throughout the entire film, especially when they show time progressing, is a Japanese maple tree, but the fruit of this tree is known as a Samara.
Aww,
How cool is that?
that's
right?
cute.
Right? I thought that was cute too. Another interesting fun fact is on the VHS release, the initial one, if you rewind the tape back to the very, very beginning, or just put the tape in when the VCR is fully rewound, when you play it, you see the cursed video. And then after the segment ends, you hear a phone ringing twice. And then it goes straight into the previews. Also, after the movie ended, you see some additional scenes that help explain the mystery of the cursed video. But as soon as they reissued the VHS, it's just the movie itself. So I guess I'll never know what was on the mystery at the end part of the cursed video. Fun fact number 3, when Rachel is looking off of her balcony at the units of the other residents, she focuses on one apartment, and it contains a seated man in a wheelchair with his leg in a cast. This is kind of a nod to Hitchcock's movie Rear Window, in which the main character with his left leg in a cast peers into his neighbor's apartments. But going even further than that, in The Ring, the man with the broken leg is watching a race, and the main character in Rear Window broke his leg while photographing a race. So it's just a big, tip of the hat to Hitchcock and his movie Rear Window.
I like Easter eggs like that in films.
I do too. I think they kind of add a fun little pop of info to it. Fun fact number 4. Long before the movie premiered, the killer video, the actual video, was used as a commercial. But the commercial didn't mention any movie or anything like that for almost a month. So I can only imagine how freaked out people would be to see that kind of movie commercial on TV without having any sort of background information on it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Blair Witch, where they released it as they didn't say whether or not it was real or not, and everybody just assumed it was.
Creepy. And my final fun fact. On its first week of release in the US and Canada, select cinemas put actual copies of the cursed tape on seats for unsuspecting viewers as freebies. I think that's pretty creepy. I mean, now the cursed video is available as an Easter egg feature on the DVD where you can watch it. But I think it's pretty creepy to go into a movie theater to watch this, and then all of a sudden you leave with a VHS that you found on your seat.
I love that. That's definitely a flex.
Okay, so this is just a personal thing, but I personally look away for bits of the video because I don't want to commit to saying that I watched it all the way through because I'm still afraid that somebody's going to start calling me. So sometimes I just
Yes.
close my eyes for a little bit or just
I
look
do that
away.
too. I did that too. And I was like,
Yeah.
hi, but it's also just really disturbing imagery. I hate it. It's so
Yeah.
gross and uncomfortable, and the twitching fingers. I was like, ugh, I hate it. So I just like turned my head and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna fully keep my eyes here.
That means we haven't watched it, so like we're safe, and that's why, like, that's my brain.
Well, also we've talked about our Catholic brains and how you have also blessed the walls with holy water of your room, and I totally see why you did that, so it's okay.
Yeah.
After we're done with this, I'm going to star 67 both of you and just say 7 days.
Kind of evil in this world, and I love.
Love you guys.
Love you too. It's just like the seat warmer, except more savage.
Sorry for all the listeners who don't understand what star 67 is.
Oh, yeah, that's
look it up.
Sad.
That is sad. It's how I used to prank call people, but also star 69 was how you could figure out who called you. And I did that a lot as a kid. It was fun.
And with that, that's our review of The Ring.
Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.
And also, please, please, please go and follow us, post, talk about us to your friends. We really want to hear what you got to say. Give your girls a review. We really want to hear your thoughts. Comment on our post. If you find something funny, let us know. We love to hear from you. We love the interaction. It's a lot of fun. On Facebook, you can follow us at The Stephen Queens. On Instagram, we're at The Stephen Queens. On Twitter, we're at Stephen_Queens. And then we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we are now on YouTube and Google Podcasts. So please go ahead and give us a follow on there. Download our podcasts. And again, tell your friends about us.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. This is Bella.
This is Shannon.
And this is Ashley. Stay creepy.
You have 7 days to subscribe to this podcast.